And welcome to another Panther-Lair weekend recap here on the Panther-Lair.com YouTube channel. We do this every Monday. Break down everything that happened over the weekend, over the last few days, even leading into the weekend, and anything kind of coming out of the weekend that you need to know about to get your week started if you're a Pitt fan. Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting, anything going on in the world of Pitt sports. We're going to bring you up to date so that when you get your Monday started, when you get ready to roll through the week, you know what's going on. You know what all the big talking points are and the things you want to talk to your friends about and let them know that, what's happening in Pitt. You can be the informed guy by what we run down here on the weekend recap. And there were no commitments this weekend. Last week we had a ton of commitments to talk about. 6 football recruits, one basketball commitment. None of that. But that doesn't mean that it was a quiet weekend. Another big camping weekend. You can see that number 1 on the list here. And I might have inverted the order of priorities here of what's the biggest story. But this is how we're going to run through it. Another big camping weekend for the Pitt football coaches in the South Side. They brought a ton of recruits. A ton of high school football players, I should say, to the South Side for their prospect camps. They had a camp on Saturday. They had a camp on Sunday. And they were huge. Last weekend's prospect camp on Saturday had about 520 or so players show up in the South Side. This past Saturday, I think they got closer to and maybe even top 600. A lot. And most of those were not Division I prospects. Probably a lot weren't even Division II prospects. But they were all there to work with the Pitt coaches, to work with the Pitt players, and to experience being around Pitt. And I talked about this a lot last week. I talked about it on the Panther-Lair show. I wrote about it in the 321 column, about the momentum that Pitt's got in recruiting, about the prominence that Pitt got out of being the ACC champs and going to the Peach Bowl and being ranked in the top 15. It just makes you more visible. It makes you a more desirable destination, a place that kids want to go, a place that kids want to be. And that's what we're seeing with these guys showing up over the weekend. Now, were any of them top recruits that Pitt's going to go after? Yes. I know I always kind of say there was 550 kids, but most of them are not Power 5 kids. Most of them are not D1 kids. There were D1 kids. There were Power 5 kids. And where it's perhaps most interesting, and what I've been most surprised by and shocked by out of 3 prospect camps so far, is the talent level at quarterback. And this is maybe the biggest thing to keep an eye on, is the talent level at quarterback that Pitt has been bringing into their prospect camps. Now, if you follow on Twitter, if you keep an eye on the social media activity of recruits and Pitt coaches and all that kind of thing, you see a lot of these younger quarterbacks tweeting out their offers from Pitt. 2024 kids who are kids going into their junior year. Okay, I think that's a little bit plausible. But then you have the 2025 kids going into their sophomore year, the 2026 kids going into their freshman year of high school, and they're tweeting out that they got an offer from Pitt. Now, could all of those guys turn around and commit right now? Probably not. Some maybe. Most probably not. But Pitt is getting in the door with them. And by offering at this point, by talking to them about how interested Pitt is in those kids, they're getting a lot of those kids to come to campus for the prospect camps. And so what we've seen over the course of 3 prospect camps, last Saturday and then Saturday and Sunday this past weekend, is maybe the best collection of quarterback talent I've seen in 17 years of covering Pitt prospect camps. It's almost been sort of the bane of my existence at these prospect camps, is I'll see all these really good wide receivers and all these really good DBs, and I'm excited to see all the one-on-ones and the 7-on-7 reps and see these guys go head-to-head and who can win this battle one-on-one. But the quarterback play is just so subpar. It's just not good enough to really get in a lot of instances, to get a good feel for how the receivers and the DBs actually play. This has been the case for years. It's just they just don't get many good quarterbacks. Well, that hasn't been the case this year. Quarterbacks have been showing up from all over the country. We've written about a bunch of them, either interviewed them if they're guys in the 2024 class, written about them, or the guys in the 25 and 26 classes. There are kids coming in from Tennessee. There was a kid in the recruiting class of 2027 going into 8th grade. He was at their camp on Saturday, and he looks every bit the stud. He's going to be one of the best quarterback prospects in the country. And he was at the camp, and he looks like it. He looks the part. He's bigger than your average 8th grader. And I know it seems ridiculous, but to be going after and talking about, and for Pitt to be talking to guys in those grades, middle school kids. But the reality is, particularly at quarterback, you have to get in early. You have to establish those bonds and create those connections for the top guys if you want to have a chance of getting them. And that's what Pitt has been doing. And major credit to Frank Cignetti, I think, has certainly created the expectation that they're going to be active on the recruiting trail, that they're going to be going after these high school kids and these younger kids to try and establish those connections. But big time credit to John DiBiaso, the assistant quarterbacks coach. He came in, he was at Vanderbilt, he had worked with Frank Cignetti. Cignetti insisted on bringing him to Pitt so he could work with the quarterbacks, both on the team and in recruiting. And he's been a big point of contact for all of these guys. And I just talked to Isaiah Marshall, a 4-star dual threat quarterback in the 2024 recruiting class. He's like the number 4 dual threat quarterback prospect in the entire nation in that class, kid out of Michigan. I talked to him after he went to Pitt's camp on Sunday, and he said that, Coach D, he called him. Some people call him Coach D, some people call him Coach Dibs. John DiBiaso is his main guy there. And DiBiaso was the main reason that this kid, Isaiah Marshall, came to Pitt for the visit, because of that connection that he has there. And I've heard that from a bunch of guys. Some of the guys they've got up from Tennessee, some of the guys that have come in from all over the place. It's been the main, that's been the main draw. And so I think it's just such a different world from what quarterback recruiting was a year ago. And Mark Whipple's sort of general disinterest in participating. He would do the bare minimum of what he needed to do to get the roster ready. And kind of beyond that, there wasn't much to be said. It's been very different with Frank Cignetti and, like I say, John DiBiaso working with him. Number 2 up there on the list, a quarterback to watch. Now keep an eye on this. Jakari Williams is a quarterback recruit in the class of 2024. He's from Georgia. He's coming to Pitt this week. He's going to be on campus on Thursday for an unofficial visit. That's the way it is. Official visits where the school can pay for your travel and your lodging and all those things. Those guys, official visits can't happen until you're a senior in high school or right at the tail end of your junior year. Jakari Williams, this quarterback we're talking about, is going into his junior year of high school. And so he's not able to take an official visit. So he'll be here on an unofficial visit. He's paying his own airfare. He's paying for his own lodging. He's paying for his own food, all those things, because he wants to be at Pitt and be around the coaches. And this is a guy to watch, because it appears that Jakari Williams, the 2024 quarterback, is one of Pitt's top quarterback targets in that class, maybe the top quarterback target in that class. And they're in on a lot of guys in the 2024 recruiting class. But Jakari Williams is high on that list. And it's very early in the recruiting process still. He just finished his sophomore year of high school. But quarterbacks tend to be on an accelerated timeline. Isaiah Marshall, the 4-star kid I just talked about, is going into his junior year as well. He wants to commit at the end of his junior season. Not the end of his junior year of high school, but the end of his junior season. So, committing before January of your junior year is not unheard of with quarterbacks, because there's a limited number of spots out there. And so those guys want to find their spot, they want to lock in their spot, and then they want to be recruiters for the class. They want to be actively involved in recruiting more athletes and players to come join them in that school's recruiting class. Kenny Minchie, the class of 2023 quarterback recruit for Pitt, who committed earlier this spring, took a very active role in the official visit weekend, and I think had an impact on getting a couple guys to commit, and certainly helped Pitt's standing with a few of the guys who didn't commit. I could see Pitt looking to get a guy like Jakari Williams in the fold early to help build that 2024 recruiting class and take up the quarterback spot right off the bat and get that done and sort of locked up and taken care of. I'm not saying that I'm predicting a commitment this week, but keep an eye on him. The fact that he's coming up for an unofficial visit on his own, and the fact that he appears, it's both sides of it. He appears to value Pitt pretty highly. He has Pitt pretty high on his list, and Pitt has him pretty high on their list. And so, those two factors make it one to watch. So keep an eye on that. later this week. And then the other thing, number 3, and we talked about this on the Panther-Lair show on Wednesday night. I didn't talk about it last week on the weekend recap because it hadn't happened yet. But just to refresh, in case you missed it midweek, Derek Kyler, grad transfer quarterback from Dartmouth, is coming to Pitt to enroll and join the team for the 2022 season. That'll be his final year of eligibility, so he only has 1 year left. He's a guy who played throughout. I guess he played 3 years at Dartmouth. Didn't play his first year and missed the COVID year, so he played the other 3 years. And was remarkably productive. Even more than productive, he was remarkably efficient. He was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the Ivy League. Was one of the best quarterbacks in the Ivy League. Set efficiency records in the Ivy League and at Dartmouth. Led Dartmouth to the Ivy League championship this past year, and over the course of his career threw 42 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He had, over the course of his career, a 1.1% interception rate of interceptions out of his total attempts. Kenny Pickett this past season had 1.4%. So Derek Kyler, playing in the Ivy League, still his career numbers are, at least in terms of his interception rate, was similar to what Kenny Pickett did this past year. How does Derek Kyler fit in? I mean, I think you look at it and say, this team has a pretty solid top 2 at quarterback with Keaton Slovis and Nick Patty. What they're lacking, or where they could really run into trouble or face an issue, is if they need to go to their third guy. If Derek Kyler comes in and just fills that role, it'll be worth it because he's a guy with a ton of experience and a guy who's very efficient. And I think if you're looking at if his role is the third quarterback, you look at what you want out of your third quarterback. You'd love to have a guy with a ton of game experience and a guy who avoids making mistakes. Because we saw in the Peach Bowl what happens when your third string quarterback goes in with minimal experience and is maybe a little bit mistake prone. You saw the result. With a guy like Derek Kyler on board, that shouldn't be the case. It's insurance. You should be protected against that kind of scenario unfolding again. And then if something does happen that one of your top 2 quarterbacks has to go down or does go down and Kyler shifts into the backup role, I think you still feel solid about it because, again, you've got a guy who's played a lot and you've got a guy who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And I think that's a good combination to have. So I think that's how he fits in there. Number 4 on the list here, a commit visits elsewhere. Shelton Lewis, defensive back from Georgia, who committed to Pitt on his official visit 2 weekends ago, took an official visit to Arkansas this past weekend. Now, out of the 6 guys who committed during that first official visit weekend, we interviewed them all. We asked them all, are you going to take more visits? And Lewis was the only one who said, I don't know, I might. The other 5 were all like, we're canceling. Not going to take any more visits. We're done. This is it. Pitt's it for me. Now, we've heard guys say that before and they end up going elsewhere anyway. But Lewis was the one guy who said, I might still take those visits. And he did. He went to Arkansas this past weekend. It seems like he's going to probably go to North Carolina for an official visit. First off, Shelton Lewis is a very good player. Shelton Lewis is a priority defensive back target for the Pitt coaching staff. Shelton Lewis is someone they would like to hold on to and keep in their recruiting class. Shelton Lewis is a player they would be disappointed if they lose. So we're not going to go down that road of saying no big deal. Yes, they can find another defensive back. No, this is not a guy that they're pushing out. No, this is not a guy that they're okay with losing. They would like to hold on to him. And that's why, for all the big talk, they're not going to drop him just because he took this official visit to Arkansas. The thing to always keep in mind is that since they started having June official visits, and we get these big June recruiting pushes with all these commitments in the month of June, every year that this has happened, they've lost 1 or 2 guys who committed in June. Every year. I could run down a list of guys like Travis Kuntz and Brandon Mack and what was his name? I forgot his name. Guy from the Orlando area ended up going to North Carolina. He was a linebacker. He was an outside linebacker. And they ended up signing Servassier Dennis ultimately to fill that position in the 2019 class. So it worked out well because the guy I'm talking about, I still can't think of his name. I should have had this written down. Kadri. It's like Kadri something. He ended up transferring from North Carolina anyway. So, it ended up working out. But T. Denson was another one, in a subsequent year. they've lost guys. Henry Parrish, you'll recall, the running back who ended up at Ole Miss in Miami. Every year, some of these guys are going to decommit. It's just inevitable. And sometimes you can predict the guy. Usually you can predict the number of how many guys are probably going to go. And there probably will be, if you get 10 commitments in June, probably at least 2 of those guys are going to sign with different schools, either through the coaching staff's decision or through their decision. So it's not surprising to see a guy like Shelton Lewis take an official visit, particularly since he said he probably would, but also just playing the odds. Some of these guys are not going to end up at Pitt, particularly guys who commit earlier in the month. I think are probably even more likely. That's probably where you'll find the bulk of the guys who end up decommitting, because they've got the rest of the month. What are they going to do with their time? No, take some official visits, get a free trip somewhere. Hey, I really like this place. I think I might want to go here. It's natural and it's inevitable, and we probably should have said it at the beginning of June that this kind of thing happens, but it does. Now, Shelton Lewis is not decommitted. I should say that. He has not come out and said, I'm decommitting. Hopefully by the time I get this video, hopefully he hasn't done that by the time this video uploads. He may decommit. He may stay with Pitt. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't really know what his plans are. He obviously liked Pitt enough that he committed on that official visit. We'll see what he ultimately ends up deciding to do. All right, and the final one, and maybe I saved the biggest story for last. Hoop Splash coming. And this came out of nowhere. This really came out of nowhere. Sunday night, I guess it was. Dion Johnson, former 5-star guard. He's a 4-star point guard now, top 50 player in the nation. At one point, he was a top 10, top 5 player in the nation in the recruiting class of 2022, which is an important point to keep in mind. Freshly back on the market after asking out of his letter of intent to Oregon. Announced the top 3. Washington State, Mississippi State, and your University of Pittsburgh Panthers. Out of nowhere. For us, for me, for most people who follow this program, out of nowhere. I don't necessarily think it was out of nowhere for the Pitt coaches. I think the haste with which things have happened and likely will continue to happen was probably maybe a little bit of a surprise, because Dion Johnson, by all indications, it looks like he decommitted and asked out of and got out of his letter of intent to Oregon on the 9th or the 10th, somewhere around there, which would be like Thursday or Friday. So to turn around and have a top 3 announced already on Sunday, just a couple days after, without taking any visits or anything like that, that happens fast. That happens fast, and that's almost the move of a guy who kind of knows what he wants to do. And there's been talking about taking visits. Is he going to visit here? Is he going to visit there? There's a Mississippi State visit. Is he going to go there? Is he ever going to get to Pitt? It's Monday, June 13th. Most incoming freshmen, most transfers are on campus, practicing with the team, working out with the team, taking classes, getting ready to go. I think there's a real possibility Dion Johnson, 4-star guard, skips visits altogether and just goes, picks a school and just goes. Makes the best business decision, what makes the most sense for him in terms of playing time and opportunity and that kind of thing, and just goes. And I think Pitt's got a real shot here. And I like I said, things are happening fast in this situation, and I think they'll continue to happen fast, and it very well may be that by the time you watch this video, new events will have unfolded that contradict things I just said. But I think it's going to happen quick, and I think Pitt is very much in the hunt. Not just because they were announced as a top 3 school, but I think they have a real shot at landing a guy who is one of the premier guards in the class of 2022. And what a grab that would be. Now, there's backstory there. There's baggage there. He's a guy who moved around to a bunch of different high schools. He's a guy who was committed to Syracuse at one point. He was a guy who, as I said, committed to and signed with Oregon. So you're looking at, ultimately, he's going to end up at his third college commitment, multiple high schools. You look into those situations, and if you're Jeff Capel or the coaching staffs at any of these schools, you're looking into those situations and trying to make sure that those are red flags. Those are red flags. You have to evaluate the situation and find out if they are deal breaker red flags for you. or if it's something you can live with and move on and take this player who's very, very talented and could come in and work behind Nelly Cummings, with Nelly Cummings, be the future after Nelly Cummings. It's that kind of potential. You just got to make sure that if there is risk, that the reward is worth it. If there's risk that you're taking on, is the potential reward going to be worth it? So that's going to be an interesting situation to watch. Like I said, there may be events that unfold between now and the time you watch this video that contradict what I've been saying. I hope not, but I think things are going to move fast and they're going to keep rolling. So stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the latest Pitt football, basketball, and recruiting news. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit that subscribe button. That helps us get videos like this out to more people, get seen more. If more people get seen, then if more videos get seen by more people, that helps us spread the word and keep building this YouTube channel up. We're trying to put more content out. We had a great interview last week with the Diaz-Graham twins. Hopefully you got a chance to check that out. Jorge and Guillermo, they were great. I thought it would be a good interview. It ended up being a great interview. It was a lot of fun to do the interview. It was a lot of fun to watch it back later. Highly, highly recommend checking that out. And to make sure you don't miss videos like that, video interviews like that, weekend recaps. We're not calling it a weekend update. Weekend recap videos like this. And so you don't miss the Wednesday night live show at 8:30 every week on Wednesday night, the Panther-Lair show. So you don't miss those things. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask. We do this for fun, and that's all I ask in return, is that you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. So thanks for checking in. I'm sure next week we're gonna have there's official visits coming up this weekend, Thursday to Saturday. So we're gonna have a lot to talk about on next week's weekend recap. So make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel so you don't miss it. Thanks for checking in. It's going to be a lively week again. It always is through the month of June. So have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.